right. So we will just give it a couple of minutes and let people file in, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Great.
Hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. We will get started at the top of the hour. Hello to everyone who is filing in. Thank you for joining us today. All right, we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Kenna Carlson. I am a research associate with Work2Zero, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Today is the first in our three-part Green Cross Award finalist webinar series. The Green Cross for Safety Innovation Award recognizes individuals or organizations who are successfully addressing long-held safety challenges using new or novel approaches. And these webinars are designed to highlight these accomplishments and give our finalists a platform to talk about some of the great work that they have been doing. A few quick housekeeping items before we get started. So the Green Cross Award celebration will be held next week on September 20th in San Diego, California. For more information, you can go to nsc.org/support-NSC or use that QR code and it'll take you right to the website. Today we are joined by Fatigue Science, and we will continue our series tomorrow with Aware 360 and then on Thursday with Quanta Services, both at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. And last thing, if you have any questions during the webinar, please leave them in the chat below and we will do our best to get to all of the questions. But without further ado, let me go ahead and shut. There we go. I would like to welcome Rob and Joanne with Fatigue Science. If you two could both introduce yourselves to the group.
Thanks so much, Kenna. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to share with you today. I really appreciate it. My name is Rob Higdon. I'm Senior VP of Product and Marketing here at Fatigue Science. I've been with the company about 7 years pursuing this mission, and it's just an honor to be a part of this webinar. So thank you so much and look forward to our discussion today. Over to you, Joanne.
Hi, nice to be here today. Thank you. My name is Joanne Hempstead. I'm the Director of Implementation and Professional Services at Fatigue Science. And essentially, me and my team were customer facing and helping customers implement our product ready and ensuring a successful rollout and adoption of our technology.
Excellent. So to kick things off, if you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit more about Fatigue Science and some of your offerings?
Sure, happy to do so. So at Fatigue Science, really the core of what we focus on and kind of what gets us out of bed is this pretty simple, pretty easy to understand, human problem, which, as the name implies, is fatigue. But in the industrial context, whether that's shift workers working in a mine site or on an oil and gas rig, or, truck drivers driving, 24/7, 365, taking shifts day and night. Really, it's the problem of something called cognitive fatigue. And this is a problem where, in a predictable manner, but in a pretty complex manner, frankly, what we feel as tired actually has different effects on our ability to operate safely. And so what we do as a company is we build software and services that help companies, trucking companies, mining companies, oil and gas companies, to not only predict when and where fatigue is going to become critical, but critically to take actions that can actually reduce that risk, as well as improve the efficiency and productivity of their operations. And so I'm sure we'll get into it in more detail, but our products and services are basically designed specifically for different people in a trucking organization, whether that's a dispatcher or supervisor, or at a mine site, a supervisor or a health and safety manager, or even an operator themselves, at the hands of a vehicle, so that everyone can kind of do their part in, mitigating the risks of operator fatigue.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. So could you tell me a little bit more about fatigue as an occupational hazard? What impact can that have on a workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Kenneth, for the question. I think it's something that, intuitively we all sort of know, a fatigued operator is likely to be less safe, less efficient, less productive. But, the numbers and the statistics that back it up actually surprise quite a lot of people. So, today I'll just take kind of two industries, trucking and mining. And so, in the trucking sector, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration estimates that about 40% of all heavy truck accidents are attributable to fatigue, meaning something like in North America alone, 56,000 accidents annually and 15,000 fatalities across all types of road vehicles. And for trucks specifically, 8,000 accidents and 750 deaths every year, not to mention, the countless more injuries. So that really animates us to think, this isn't a problem that has to exist, forever. In the mining sector, it's pretty much the same story. Actually, the statistics even more significant. 65% of all haul truck accidents, think about a giant mine site. It's late at night. You're driving a truck that's larger than a building. 65% of those are attributable to fatigue. And I'd say the most striking thing about this is that, the industry is sort of waking up to this realization. If you look at those same stats 20 years ago, there were stats from the NTSB and from academia, early 90s, late 90s that were saying maybe 2%, maybe 3%, maybe 20% of accidents. And with greater science and greater awareness, those numbers are shaping up. There was a study even recently by the NTSB suggesting in a limited set about 52% of accidents are attributable to fatigue. There's a whole productivity side as well that, this isn't a productivity discussion for a safety channel, but we've done some estimates about the global market impact and looked at third-party estimates, and it's about a $200 billion productivity impact across all of the industries, that face this problem. So there's money in it as well, but obviously we're here to talk about the significant impact to human lives, which really gets us out of bed there as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. Obviously, this is a very important topic. So, in your opinion, what role do employees across various roles and responsibilities in an organization play in addressing fatigue?
Sure, Joanne, did you want to start?
I'll take that one. Yeah, so Rob touched on this a little bit at the beginning, that we fundamentally believe that fatigue management is a shared responsibility. And there's three primary roles that we focus on and that are critical to the success. So operators or drivers or workers, they've got the responsibility to understand their fatigue and come to work fit for duty. And fatigue management is a key component of that. So our technology helps empower the users and the workers to understand what their level of fatigue is and how their personal habits are impacting their fatigue at work. The second role that that is important in addressing fatigue are the supervisors. So they're on crew, understanding what's happening with their crew and the responsibility to make sure their crew is safe at work. And so understanding their fatigue across the whole crew allows them to make decisions, whether it's, encouraging them to take a break, potentially assigning a different task, or in one case with one of our customers, they have a trivia moment at about 2 a.m. where they recognize there is a significant amount of fatigue of their crew at 2 a.m. And so they all get on the radio and start playing trivia games. So bringing that awareness to the operators and to the supervisors is important. And then the third role are the leaders. So those are the groups, whether it's mine operations or health and safety leaders, who are looking at this more holistically and looking at any hotspots or other issues that is going to inform strategy around schedules, work tasks, anything leading to those kind of decisions around environment as well. So essentially it's the workers play a key role, the supervisors play a key role, and the leaders do as well.
I think that was perfectly said, Joanne. The only thing I'll add, just to provide a picture for it, is, sometimes it's helpful to sort of visualize, those supervisors and dispatchers, those people really kind of on that side of it, and then kind of that middle area, just to put a picture to it as well. These are the people at leadership and operations management, looking out for the big picture and making sure the trends around fatigue, are not necessarily something that's going to worsen the issue on an ongoing basis. See how are the trends improving. And then you're absolutely right. Like, on the right-hand side, if you can see the picture here, it really ultimately everything comes down to the operators themselves, and what can we do to empower operators to not only be aware of one's fatigue, but when you're aware, to take greater caution on duty. So, ultimately there's so many hands at play, as you rightly mentioned, Joanne. And then it's a question of having everyone sort of be able to sing from the same song sheet with real data, to be mitigating fatigue ultimately in the same manner. So thanks for the question, and hopefully this picture provides a little bit of color there as well.
No, absolutely. Thank you both for that response. I would love to hear more about the technology itself, and a little bit about what the adoption process would look like for something like this.
Yeah, I'll start with that, and then we'll Rob, you can fill in the gaps that I miss. But essentially, when we think about implementing technology, like any technology that gets implemented, there's the technical aspect, which in some ways might be the easier side of things, and then there's the change management piece to it. So when we think about the technology implementation, we have a methodology that we lead our customers through, that very typically goes through planning, configuration, deployment of devices, training, and then operating. Fairly typical of a software implementation. But where we spend a lot of time as well is on the change management piece. So this is the part and the processes that we want to build up around ensuring that we understand who is being impacted. So the operators and the supervisors who are going to have different processes in their day. So making sure that we do that stakeholder analysis of understanding who's impacted. And then we understand what workflows are being done today to manage fatigue. Many of our customers might have nothing, so we're starting a little bit from scratch. Other times they might have manual processes, but we want to understand that so that we can then integrate with those processes. So we understand supervisors, an example, are very busy. We don't want to add, more workload for them. So to help with the adoption, it's really about understanding and integrating our processes. And the technology that we built through, a mobile friendly, ready supervise application that supervisors can access all the information they need on the mobile phone, things like that certainly help with that adoption. But taking them through that transition in terms of bringing awareness, making sure that they understand the why, and also developing the people around project champions and fatigue champions so that the workers have people that they can ask questions to and understand this is an important initiative for the organization. So that's, when we look at adopting the technology and rolling this out, we're looking at both the technical aspect and the processes as well.
Yeah, and I think just to add a little bit there, I think that really sums it up, Joanne, so well. One of the things we often see, just to sort of underscore a point you made in the middle there, is that question of what are customers already doing today? Because a lot of times, for serving a global audience, mining companies in South Africa and trucking companies in Asia and all across North and South America, particularly in Latin America, there are different cultures that we encounter at that starting point. And specifically different cultures around fatigue, but also different cultures around technology. And so, in some cases we find there's a deep, rich awareness that fatigue is a problem. Our Latin American customers have actually been leading, the forefront of this issue for a while. Whereas in other places, there's an educational component. How important is fatigue? Does everyone recognize it? And frankly, should workers feel comfortable sharing that they are fatigued, right? That's an important part of safety culture that's built over time. From a technology perspective as well, we often see some differences, right? So many of our customers in the mining sector have used what we call kind of reactive based systems, which is better than no technology for sure. But the goal of a camera that's in a truck, for instance, is, let's try to catch something really bad that's just about to happen right before it actually happens. It's a great investment in trying to solve the problem. But obviously, the sooner you can make people aware of what's happening 4 hours from now or 6 hours from now, the more opportunity you have to address that risk. And so, just to put a picture of that as well, where we really focus, is providing predictive data at the start of that shift. We certainly see many customers say, we're going to keep cameras if we have them already. A lot of companies, even in the mining, in the trucking sector, have cameras that try to detect people right before they fall asleep. But it's ultimately customers that are saying, we want to do more for our workers. We want to be able to provide visibility and awareness of the likely and proven risks that are likely to happen when you least expect it, 5, 6 hours, 7 hours from now, so that those situations don't happen or don't happen as frequently later. And so maybe in summary, sort of back to Joanne, what you said there, it's asking questions from the very earliest moment that we engage with a customer. Where are you today on that maturity curve of technology, and then also on the education curve around fatigue? Do you intend to promote a safety positive culture, or is fatigue something that people are ashamed of, right? And they shouldn't be, but we work with customers, really where they are to start the conversation in a practical and pragmatic place there.
Excellent. Thank you both for sharing that. Last question from me, and then we will open it up to a Q&A from the attendees. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into that Q&A chat box. But could you share for us an example of how this technology has been used either in the past or currently?
Start on that one, Joanne?
Yeah, I'll give one example, but I think there's probably a couple that you can elaborate on. The one I think of more recently, because it was quite unique, we have a customer in Papua New Guinea who have a split shift. And so they are working 3 to 9 in the morning, and then again 3 to 7 in the evening. And so when you look at their sleep opportunity, it's actually quite minimal and disrupted. And as a result of this, they were seeing quite a significant number of accidents. And, workers, they preferred to go fishing apparently than trying to get their sleep between those 2 shifts. And so a really big problem when it comes to fatigue and incidents. And so they've implemented our technology. And it's quite recent, so we're still quantifying some of the results, but the initial results in terms of getting that fatigue awareness and then making decisions on whether someone was ready and fit for duty to work was really critical. And so in some cases, they moved tasks of those people who are not ready for work. But overall, what we saw was an increase in our ready score, which is our objective measure of fatigue. In the couple months that it was implemented, they immediately saw that increase in the ready score and the fitness for duty as a result of being aware of what was happening with their workers at the individual level, and then supervisors having that ability to make appropriate decisions to keep their workforce safe. So I think that's a very recent one out of Papua New Guinea that we're excited about.
Absolutely. And I think I'd add, that example, we always get peppered with these really exciting, unique examples from around the world. So it is kind of tricky to sort of summarize the most generic case, but maybe to provide the counterweight as far as what we see most of the time. So we always kind of start with discussing, what happens at the beginning of a shift with a supervisor and their crew of workers. And, this is generally what happens if you ask for a generic or typical procedure. So I'll sort of lay out the most general case, but I think bearing in mind, as Joanne has laid out, that every customer is unique. So you're a supervisor, shift's about to start. Let's say it's an 8 p.m. night shift. You get a notification that says, here's the 2 folks that are very likely to be at super high risk among the 30 or 40 that you're personally responsible for keeping safe and effective throughout the shift. They'll look in their mobile phone, they'll see who the people are that need to have a check-in, and then it really is a personal discussion. It's not, you're not going to work, or you're going to be sent home, or what really happens next, particularly in the most safety positive cultures, is a check-in that leads to a human-to-human conversation. Ask the individual, how do you feel, right? And from there, a lot of times what we see, the most common decisions that are taken are, hey, maybe it's fine to keep working as is for a while, but 5 hours from now, when you are the worker scheduled to do the most dangerous task of the entire month, you were going to do the explosives in a mine site at 4 a.m, right? It might be the time to switch up the tasks. We see that as task rotations. These are rare actions that are taken in the most safety critical moments that have an outsized impact on both safety and productivity. I'd say rotating tasks is the most common. Joanne mentioned earlier the 2 a.m. regular mine site trivia that we hear from one particular customer that's in southwestern United States. But it very rarely is as extreme as saying, hey, we've got nothing for you to do for the rest of the shift. And even if it is that, in the most rare occasions, we really have never seen customers, send someone home without pay. It's a very safety positive culture that says, we want you to feel comfortable as a worker having an open discussion about fatigue, because, it's not just about today. It's about the future as well. And, are you going to take care of your sleep and fatigue tomorrow and the next day and the next day? It's all frankly about making an investment in your workers, showing them respect, and then in return receiving, safer and frankly, more productive outcomes, as well as a result of, making those data backed decisions in a human to human context.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that. And it's really great for me personally to hear that, employers are first and foremost taking this seriously, but that it's not being used as a punitive measure, that they're, really being flexible with how they use this data and information, and using it both to the employee and the organization's benefit. So that's really great to hear. So we will move on to the audience Q&A. First question is, in your experience, how quickly do organizations see value from this technology?
You want to take that one, Joanne?
Yeah, I'm on mute. Yeah, I think, in the example I just shared, the value is within a few months, in the sense of, and Rob will talk about their ROI that we've demonstrated as well. But essentially, the big thing is the awareness that people didn't have before. So there was always this understanding that there was a fatigue issue in an organization, but to quantify it and then to have the data to then take action has been very clear, and those results can be demonstrated within a month or two of the technology being implemented. But more importantly, I'm going to have Rob talk to the ROI value, which it can demonstrate a fairly quick return as well.
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. And it's always kind of tricky with the financial side when talking about a payback period. So from a technical perspective, we've done a couple of ROI examples, including a white paper that's on our website with some mine sites. And so from a payback period perspective, you're looking at an annualized return and then dividing it by the amount of months that it would take to pay back the initial investment for that year. And what we've seen is a sub 2-month payback period. So, typically closer to the 3-week payback period, frankly, in most cases on an annualized basis. So you have to do the work and keep using the product consistently over the course of a year. And as Joanne mentions, getting those initial, cultural changes and protocols and practices do take 1 to 2 months. But when you look at it from an annualized value perspective, what we've seen, not to be salesy or talk too much about the numbers, but what we've seen for a typical North American mine site is about a $6 million annualized return on their investment in the technology when used throughout an entire mid-sized mine site. So there are real financial returns. We're doing some deeper analysis on the safety benefits. Our initial examples from several mine sites that are published in that paper show about a 13% projected reduction in overall lost time incidents, and about twice that if you isolate just the components that are addressed to fatigue directly. So ultimately, there's a safety benefit, which is what gets us out of bed in the morning, as we say. But certainly, we've had to do the work for these large enterprises to show the real financial benefit, as we lay out in that white paper as well.
Excellent, thank you. Next question is, how does the technology detect fatigue?
I'll take that one. Yeah. So from a product side, that's a great question. We get asked that one all the time. I was hoping to get a chance to put up a how it works slide. So I appreciate the question there as well. I'll just pull this one up here. So the important thing about our technology is just from a wording perspective, we technically don't detect fatigue. We're in the business of predicting fatigue. And so it's a subtle but important difference. But the thing I want to be transparent about is, when we say someone's in the red and their score is a 50 and they're very fatigued, what we're saying is they're very likely to have a high risk of fatigue and of the factors of impairment that are associated with fatigue, backed by real validated science. And so, we often see our technology then complemented, as I mentioned, by sometimes in a mine site, there'll be a camera in the vehicle that at the last minute will truly catch someone with their eyes closed. We don't have cameras. We don't have, something that is literally looking at the eyelids and scanning brain waves and saying you've just fallen asleep. We're about trying to chart when that's super likely 10 hours in advance or 15 hours in advance, very much at the start of the shift. So there's two ways that it can work. One way doesn't require wearables. It uses essentially the worker's personalized sleep opportunities based on their historical 10 days of work schedule, as well as data that remains entirely private. So demographic data and an intake survey that analyzes a complex array of factors that are statistically related to sleep. We have a machine learning model that then computes all of those factors, compares it to a massive database of wearable data that's been anonymized, de-identified from around the globe, from industrial shift workers. So similar workers to the situations that those workers find themselves in, and then feeds all of that projections of what sleep was likely in the past 10 days into a model that's been renowned for the past 25 years as the world's foremost fatigue prediction model called safety. So that sort of second model in the center there. And then on the output of that on the right-hand side is a projection hour by hour of your personal level of fatigue. So we always give the example, you might be showing up to the shift at a 92, ready to go. The supervisor asks, how are you feeling? Everyone's feeling great. And what inevitably happens is fatigue is the most insidious when 5 hours from now or 7 hours from now, when you're already in the middle of nowhere out in the field, that's when fatigue strikes. That's what we're charting a course for making awareness of at the beginning of shift. The one part that I'll just mention to highlight there that I didn't mention, if you look at kind of the bottom left-hand side of this page, it says optional. So we do have an option. Many customers do choose to give wearables to some individuals. Obviously, if you capture sleep data with wearables, that makes an even better fatigue prediction. But our machine learning algorithm can work either way and work, frankly, really well with or without wearables. So that's probably a whole separate topic of discussion, but the key message for customers there is, whether you want a software-based solution that's making fatigue predictions for each worker without requiring wearables, less of a burden, less of an operational setup, that's totally great. If you do want to distribute wearables, which certainly we've seen a lot of our mining customers adopt, that's another option as well. And we make it really seamless for that data to just, put something on your wrist and get a fatigue prediction right out of it as well. So we like to offer customers kind of the choice either way there as well.
Excellent, thank you. And we have time for, I think, one more. And you had, I think, addressed a couple of these concerns while you were speaking, but how do you address, employee concerns around privacy or company concerns around privacy?
I'll take that, Rob. Primarily we focus on messaging. So Ready is primarily designed with end user privacy in mind. And what that really means is any of your personally identifiable sleep data is kept private. So supervisors and management will not know that you went to bed at 11 p.m. and woke up at 5 p.m., nor will they know where you slept. That's often a question we've got here. And so Rob's putting that slide up there. And so keeping that, any information that we have about an individual user in terms of their demographics, their sleep data, as I mentioned, and survey information, if we're going down the route where they're not going to have wearables, then all of that information is kept private. What is shared is that Ready score. So that quantifiable value of what your fatigue level is shared with supervisors and management, as well as all the group level trends, which are anonymized. So really, once we explain this, we find that individuals, organizations, and even unions understand this and don't continue with any objections.
Yeah, and if just from like a human sense, you know, when we hear people say, "Oh my God, you're going to be looking at my data," you know, Joanne's exactly right. The minute that it's actually explained and that it's, you know, it's just that you are at a 89 while on duty. You know, that's relevant information, what your fatigue is likely to be at a certain point when you're operating a 10-ton, you know, haul truck, right? Very different than saying, you know, you went to bed last night. Nobody's looking at that. No one can even see that, right? And the other important thing is, okay, so I'm at an 89 or 79 or 54. That's my likely fatigue while I'm operating this big, you know, company-owned piece of equipment. You know, that's not something to be ashamed of. That's not something to keep private. That's not something anyone's going to get punished for. Many of our customers have cultures that even without technology or data, really encourage individuals to talk about their perceived fatigue, how they're feeling. And ultimately, the most important message is that no one's going to be punished. So please, you know, we're all in this together to get through the shift, you know, safely and effectively. That's really what it's all about. And where we've had the most success with customers is when they're coming into the picture with a culture of safety, much like that already. And that's something that we continue to promote as a general message to the industry as well.
Excellent. I see we still have questions rolling in. So for anyone who might have any outstanding questions, what would be the best way to contact you? Joanne, I think he's gesturing to you.
There's multiple ways, but by email directly, if you email info@fatiguescience.com or sales@fatiguescience.com, but info actually comes directly to me or our first name, last name at Fatigue Science. So that's a way to get to us directly, but lots of information on our website, fatiguescience.com. And as I said, info@fatiguescience.com will get it to us.
Excellent. I see Sarah just popped that into the chat. So thank you, Sarah. That's it for our time today. Rob, Joanne, thank you so much for joining us and good luck at the upcoming Green Cross Awards. And thank you to our audience for joining us. And we hope you can join us again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central for our next webinar. Thank you guys. And thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kenna and Sarah. Thank you all for joining as well. Really great to chat.
Thank you.